Viewer contributions make local programming possible on WNIN. Become a member of WNIN with your contribution so we can continue to make this programming available. Visit WNIN.org and click on the donate button.
As the budget session of the Indiana General Assembly continues, there's been a lot of discussion about how some of those bills would have a substantial impact on local municipalities. We'll talk about those impacts with Evansville Mayor Stephanie Terry and Newburgh Town Manager Chris Cook. WNIN Lawmakers starts right now. Welcome to WNIN Lawmakers. I'm Noah Alatza, the Chief Communications Officer for the University of Evansville. We'll speak with the Mayor of Evansville and the Newburgh Town Manager in just a moment. But first, let's hear from Indiana Public Broadcasting's Brandon Smith about highlights from the Indiana General Assembly session this week.
A Senate committee advanced a bill that would revoke the nonprofit status of hospitals if they charge more than 300% of their modified Medicare reimbursement rate for care. But the measure faces an uncertain future in the Senate. Many Republican members have philosophical objections to strict price controls like that. A House committee added language to a bill that bans state and local government units from hosting or funding obscene performances, which are already defined in state law. Republican Representative Chris Jeter, who's behind the language, repeatedly refused to provide specific examples of what sort of performances are prompting the provision. And the current Lifeline law provides immunity from underage drinking charges for young people who seek police or medical help for someone else, but the person experiencing the medical issue doesn't have that same immunity. A bill the House sent to the governor would extend that protection. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Brandon Smith at the State House.
We're now joined by Evansville's 35th Mayor, Stephanie Terry. Mayor Terry, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
First, wanted to talk with you, obviously, about this state budgetary process that we're in right now. This is the first time that you've gone through such a process as you've been mayor. So how do you keep tabs on all of these bills as they're submitted for consideration at the General Assembly?
Sure. We have a state lobbyist, Ice Miller, we're working with, and actually every Friday we get legislative briefings. As well, we're members of the Association of Indiana mayors, and that is another group that allows us to get information on a regular basis about what's happening during session. And so this year already, I've been up to the State House, I think 2 or 3 times, engaging with our local representatives and talking about issues that are important to our community.
And is this something that you're constantly have your pulse on, right? Even throughout the year, aside from just the General Assembly session?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as issues rise, we want to try to build kind of a list or things of issues that are important to us. Number one, so that we can work with our lobbyist team to help formulate questions and things that we can, even in summer session, that we can go to those legislators, have conversations with, and then be in a position when session goes in that we're able to have those more meaningful conversations and hopefully make change happen. By kind of being advocates on behalf of local citizens.
And Mayor Terry, I know that Governor Braun had previously stated that one of his priorities was this property tax reform, right? Yep. I know that's been a major talk across the state. What message did you want to convey to the General Assembly about that proposal when you heard about it?
Yeah, so, well, first, I fully support property tax relief for Hoosiers and especially for those most in need. That's first and foremost. But, earlier this year, I stood alongside our school superintendent, some of our county officials, along with our law enforcement, both sheriff and our police chief, and city council members, library, and we all said we oppose the SB 1 that was written in that previous form, and because again of the severity of what it would mean for local municipalities, and we've seen mayors all over the state really rise up in kind of a uproar, I think, about how detrimental this would be to being able to offer basic services. And so that's really our message, is to let's find a balanced, more targeted approach to providing property tax relief. We're hopeful that that conversation will continue over the next few weeks, and we'll end up with something that will not only benefit homeowners, but also local municipalities.
And we know that the property tax reform bill has since been amended quite a bit from that original version. So what are your thoughts on this new amended bill that you've seen?
Well, I'll tell you, in the mayor's world, it went from worse to bad.
Wow.
And there's still, again, a significant amount that will be impacted. If we wanted to dive in really into the numbers, already our projections, and even in talking with our financial consultants, and over a 3-year period, we could see a 19.5 million loss in revenue, in property tax revenue. And to put that in perspective, 60% of our general fund is for public safety.
Wow.
So we're talking about some meaningful things that would have to be looked at over the next 3 years if it's passed in its current form. 60%
to public safety.
Yeah.
So can we dig a little bit deeper? What would that look like then from the city's perspective, from a budgetary standpoint? I know you don't have a crystal ball, but would you be looking at public safety? Would it be just across the entire city, perhaps?
Yeah, we would have to look at everything for sure. But also begin not only looking at other possibilities for revenue too. That would be a part of the conversation. But again, we would, I think the desire from the Braun administration is that municipalities find more ways, continue to be more efficient, and make some initial cuts to what they're doing, but still offer basic services. And that will be very challenging when you're talking about the level of resources that will be pulled away.
So I understand too, Mayor Terry, that we've got HB 1461. So on a separate note, we'll move on from property taxes. HB 1461, this would affect road funding. Could you explain that bill maybe and what its local impact is for the city of Evansville?
Sure. So this bill is really, all about, the community crossings grant. Many communities, we receive about $1.5 million annually for road paving, overlays, you call it, you name it. It's a great source, and then we match that to be able to expand how much we're able to do each year. This year, I will tell you, we've been able to go a little bit more aggressively in the road funding, and we almost tripled that. And so it's about close to $7 million we're doing in road projects, which I'm really excited about because it's something we hear about quite a bit in our office. And so with this bill, it is now requiring municipalities, if they don't have the wheel tax, that they'll have to, again, put in place a wheel tax in order to get the community crossings grant moving forward. And so that's something that, the city council and I would have to consider if we want to stay in position to receive that $1.5 million each year.
So can you clear the air? I know a lot of people, you just mentioned it, people constantly reaching out to you, right?
They do.
Why is the mayor not paving the road? Not that she would physically be out there, but why can she not fix the roads? Can you help for viewers at home understand how does that process work? If they do see a pothole, maybe where could they go to report it?
Yeah, so I think we're a little behind in our technology, but there's an email address that you can go to report potholes. I encourage you to go to our website, of course, evansville.in.gov. It says report a problem. Click that, and there are a list of all the problems that we've heard over and over again, and we encourage you to send those. But there's a pothole at I think evansville.in.gov that you can report those with the address and location, and we'll get to those. And of course, as weather is warming up, we'll definitely be out. We were out this morning as part of our block by block initiative. But just to put in perspective too, the really amount of money, I think it was in talking with our city engineer, he said he had a conversation with a former, city engineer about road work. And I think it was about 2017 or 19. At that time, you needed at least $5.5 million each year to maintain and get roads where they were at a standard of good quality that you could better maintain them over time. We've not been able to budget at that level for a number of years, and so we're behind. I would think probably by now it would really take about $12 million to really get our roads up to the quality that they need to be so that they're not deteriorating like they are now.
Wow. We've got a lot to get to, so I'm gonna move on to HB 1312, Mayor Terry. This is regarding public notices and how that would perhaps affect things right here in Evansville.
Yeah, well, number one, I think it modernizes public access to information, and it would also be a cost savings for local government. While I don't have the exact amount, but the amount of resources and money that we spend for public notices would significantly go down, because there would be a public website that people can get to, a digital system for things that are various items that are posted. So I think it's a great thing to put into play. It's probably long overdue to have that available, but we know that we also want to support local media, and hopefully that will be a piece of the bill and when it's finally passed.
And we know you brought back those traveling city halls around the city. Curious too, when you talk about transparency, particularly related to this bill, with your administration, how are you hoping to continue to ride this wave, so to speak, of being transparent and having access to the representative?
Oh yeah, I mean, we'll definitely continue the traveling city hall meetings. We just completed our strategic plan and rolled that out earlier this year, and a big part of that is modernizing technology and being more involved and engaged in the community. This morning we were at Block by Block, and so it was close to 100 individuals out there, both city employees, but then also nonprofit organizations and other volunteers that are coming out for their community. It's those type of events and initiatives that really bring people together. And so we'll continue that and hopefully ramp up what we can do from a technology standpoint over the year, whether that's looking at enhancements in our website and how people can report potholes and get better services. We want to make sure that it's easy to report problems that you're having in your community, so that we can be a bit more responsive. We actually have our communications director in my office is actually in Nashville right now doing a tour of their 311 department. And it's, again, another system that can be used, whether it's through an app, a city app, again, where people can report problems and issues and get, a quicker response.
I'm curious, before we leave you, what is your message to constituents, just in general, maybe about the proposed state budget, how it might impact Evansville, property tax reform, all of it? What do you share to your constituents? Yeah,
I mean, we're monitoring things closely. As I said, even this afternoon, I've got a meeting with our state lobbyist and to talk through, what's happening and what occurred this week. And we remain hopeful, really, more than anything. New administration brings new changes. We know that. But again, we believe that we have good relationships with our local representation at the State House and Representative O'Brien and Burton and Senator Becker. And so we can keep those lines of communication open. And we believe that in the end, we're going to come to something that's going to be great for not only cities, but the state as a whole. And we'll be able to continue to offer the best and services we possibly can for the residents of Evansville.
Evansville Mayor Stephanie Terry, thank you so much for your time. It's always great to see you.
Same here.
Now we're joined by Chris Cook, the town manager for Newburgh. Chris, thanks for being here.
Welcome. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So first I wanted to ask you about what is your process for keeping track of bills that are working through the General Assembly?
We've got a little bit of staff here at Town Hall in Newburgh and our legal team, myself, my deputy town manager, and our legal advisor, a couple members of the town council. We kind of keep an eye in partnership with the Accelerate Indiana Municipalities, the AIM group, to kind of give us a heads up of what to track, and we kind of filter through that. We have discussions once or twice a week, now that we're in the meat of the session, so you almost have to have your head on a swivel at all times, and we've been in correspondence with, out of that group, we keep in correspondence with our local delegation, whether it be Senator Becker, Representative Tim O'Brien, Cindy Ledbetter, she also has a small sliver of Newburgh, so we kind of keep in track with them and kind of update on what our needs are as far as the legislation's coming.
Is this something that you're monitoring even before the General Assembly session starts?
Yeah, if you're not meeting with your delegation 6 months out, beforehand, you're not doing your work as an administrator for a municipality. So I came into August of 2024. Immediately in the first couple of weeks, I was setting meetings with some of our delegation here locally to kind of get on the radar to make sure that we told our narrative for Newburgh about how we want to see things happen with some everything goes into committee. They have summer study sessions, and you kind of get an inkling of what's going to happen. And then with the governor, running on what he did with the property taxes, we knew something was going to happen. So we wanted to get out in front of it. We had a couple meetings, had some discussions, and then we just worked with our partners at AIM to kind of keep an eye on things. And it's been go ever since.
Sure. And you mentioned the property tax reform that Governor Braun had introduced this proposal. How would that impact Newburgh, both the original now and this amended proposal as well? Well,
you got to look at it this way. Evansville's a big city. Newburgh's a small town. Everybody thinks with the Newburgh zip code that they're in the town of Newburgh. The town is actually about 3,400 residents. So when you look at our budget, it's much smaller than a city like Evansville's. It would have affected us in its original inception about 49 to 50% of our revenue. Wow. So about a little over $1 million. To put it in perspective in our budget, to kind of put it in terms that you can understand and have that visual, not saying we would ever cut these things, but that's the cost of our police department and our first responders with the volunteer fire department.
If those cuts were to move forward, you would be looking at potentially not having the volunteer fire department?
No. We would have first responders. We would have a law enforcement presence. But what we would have to do is look across the board. We just might have to get very creative with the manpower numbers and some of the services that we would be able to provide as a town. We have a street department. We have a park system. We also have a sewer utility that's kind of outside the civil town side of things, but we would really have to, it would be a challenge. If you took 49% away from what you're doing overnight, that wouldn't just be a challenge for Newburgh. There would be hundreds of municipal organizations across the state and school corporations for that matter, that overnight, they're in a bind. And to kind of elaborate, I don't feel through this process that the public really fully understands property taxes. They assume, like when you pay property taxes, it goes up to Indianapolis and it's divvied out. Well, it goes up to Indianapolis, but then it gets sent back to the county level. And roughly, when you look at a county like Vanderbilt County or Warwick County, if you do a pie chart for every tax dollar that comes in on property taxes, 50% usually is towards your school corporation right off the top. Then you have a small sliver for your municipal entities, your county government. If you have a library board, another sliver, and maybe a small, very small sliver for your parks. That money is all affected locally. So when you start saying we're going to cut property taxes, essentially you got folks in Indianapolis that are going to pass that responsibility of having these solutions back to the county level. They're going to make the county officials be the bad guy because the only way to, if this went away overnight, you're going to have a county official that's going to have to look at raising local income taxes to make up that difference. Of course, there's some budget tightening that can be done in any organization. I luckily inherited a wonderful team in Newburgh. Our clerk treasurer, Nanette Angel, is amazing. She has prepared the town's budget in a way to where we're run really close to where we need to be. There's not a lot of fat. We're like a lean slice of meat in the butcher counter. There's always fat to trim, but there's not a whole lot that we can really do unless you start talking about services and manpower.
I appreciate you sharing some of that insight and education, especially for viewers at home.
And I just feel with the viewers at home, in my experience, I don't feel government at the state and local level has really put it in terms that anybody can understand. Property owners are burdened with paying this tax. If you start taking that away, a local income tax is going to tax everybody. I agree that there needs, as an individual in Indiana, I agree that there needs to be some property tax reform. But you can't go cold turkey overnight. You can't put it back, as they talked about in some of the updates, going back to the 21-20 levels, because we all know what prices have done after COVID. I've been working with suppliers on many of our projects in town, and I've got the memo that April 1st, everything's going up, whether it be a roofing project, a road construction project, even a playground project for our parks that we're working on, everything's going up. The magical window appears to be April Fool's Day on April 1st, so we're trying to get as much done before then so we can maximize the dollars and kind of keep that cost as low as possible as good public stewards that we are in Newburgh.
I'm curious too, Chris, what are some of the items in this budget bill that you're also perhaps keeping your eyes on?
One of the big things in Newburgh is House Bill 1037. It's now in the Senate. I believe it's in the Environmental Affairs Committee. It comes up Monday, I believe, at 10 a.m. Indianapolis time, and that deals with MS4 and stormwater. You know, unfortunately, the town of Newburgh, we're at the bottom of a hill by a river, a very big river, and you know water flows downhill. So over the past year, I kind of inherited some initiatives at the town engineering department, our wonderful town council, and some of the staff. We've been working on strengthening our stormwater program to where we're more in line with a lot of the regional entities that have similar issues. So we passed a new ordinance and a new manual back in December through town council to where our standards are actually higher than that of IDEM. Because of where we're positioned and how the water flows right through our community, we have a tremendous amount of stormwater issues when you talk about that. When you look at the topography of Indiana, the glaciers made it nice and smooth up until about Bloomington. You get Bloomington south, you know, it's a little bit hilly, and then you get down to the river. You can only imagine what we're dealing with. I find it ironic that a legislator from up in the northern part of the state, where it's a little more flat, who may or may not have some ties to the home building industry, is wanting to relax that standard. You know, you cannot take a cookie cutter and just cut every single community in Indiana. When I worked in Evansville with United Neighborhoods years ago, we had a landlord registry that was the envy of the state. And what happened was there was some initiatives in central Indiana that some of the property owners got together and made some legislation that was actually less than our standard. So in the state of Indiana, when they pass something out of the State House, we as a local municipality cannot trump what they pass. So this legislation in House Bill 1037 would be a regression of the standard that we have in Newburgh, and let alone several of the communities from Jasper to Vincennes down to Evansville.
And what would the consequences of that be for Newburgh?
Well, the consequences would be you wouldn't have the stringent requirements and you wouldn't have the management of the stormwater. So you could imagine when we get one of those 30-minute rains in the middle of June that drops like 4 inches in 30 minutes and you get to an historical level, you're not going to have the regulations as stringent as they are now, to where, yeah, it's going to still work out, but you're just lessening the standard and you're opening up the potential for property damage and other issues that we just don't want to deal with since we're on a hill at the bottom of the river.
Right.
You know, it's just, it upsets me, you know, when you see a piece of legislation like this that lessens a standard for a community that has a stormwater problem, or like in Evansville a few years ago with the property owners, you know, and the rental properties. Evansville, because they had that law, had to regress back to the state standard, and it freed up some of the stringent policies that were in place to kind of manage some of the problems with absentee landlords. Anytime I see legislation like that, since that experience back 10 years ago or so, it gets on my radar and it kind of irks me a little bit. And I know with my team, with our town engineer, our deputy town manager, who's our MS4 coordinator, and our sewer plant operator, we have been working hard. They were working hard before I got there, but we've been working hard the past few months to try to get our program up to something that can be an example for the region. There's a regional group that meets monthly that just deals with stormwater. Representatives from, like I said, Jasper, Vincennes, Evansville, Posey County, all over. And we kind of gather and we talk just about stormwater issues. Not everywhere in the state is that type of thing going on because most of the state is pretty flat. So that's a bill that we've really talked with our local delegation on. Sent some emails to Senator Becker and Senator Tomes this week to kind of update them because it is in the Environmental Committee Monday morning at 10 o'clock Eastern time.
So more to come on that.
Oh, yeah.
And before we leave you, Chris, is there anything else that your message maybe perhaps to constituents, just, you know, broadly speaking, maybe about the proposed budget and its effects on Newburgh? What do you share with your constituents?
You know, when you talk about property taxes, taxes have not gone up. The assessments have gone up. Therefore, the tax rates haven't. We know that there needs to be property tax reform in the state of Indiana. We just need to do it in a smart way to where there's not a window overnight where we're missing 49% of our budget. We still have a need for services. Every community in Indiana has a need for services. I don't feel that the local county officials should bear the brunt of being the bad guy on trying to find a local tax to make up for this loss. But when you start talking about some of the discussions with veterans over 65 and people over 65, those are legitimate things that they need to be looking at. I'm sure we can more than make up with a little bit of belt tightening and stuff like that. We can make up for that. But when you look at the big picture items, they're going to do right. At the end of the day, Republican, Democrat, they're going to serve Southwestern Indiana and the state of Indiana and try to move us forward in a manner that suits us all. Folks don't realize when you get around the country, our property taxes here in Indiana are some of the lowest in the entire nation. So when I hear people talk about how they're taxed to no end here in Indiana, I mean, you could tell they don't travel much. But I still think, we can do more with less, and we have to do that. We have to maximize our purchasing agreements, maximize purchasing power, and if some of these things do pass in the way they're written now, and we have to make some accommodations, you're going to see some of the municipalities start working together in ways they're not currently working. The county, the school corporation, like towns like Newburgh, Chandler, Linville, we're going to have to start looking at things like insurance, some shared resources, some ways to collectively purchase to kind of maximize those few dollars we have. We value every dollar of revenue that we have in the town of Newburgh, and we try to put it out to the maximum potential benefit for the folks. With the town council and our clerk treasurer, they have been great stewards of that awesome responsibility. And I assure you, no matter what happens, we're in that silly season of the session where a sentence can be tacked on here, or you can add a word there, and you can kind of change things up, and it can have a big difference. But I think with my team having their head on a swivel, we're going to represent the taxpayers in the town of Newburgh very well.
Chris Cook, Town Manager for Newburgh, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks again to Evansville Mayor Stephanie Terry and Newburgh Town Manager Chris Cook for discussing the local impacts of some of the bills in the General Assembly. I'm Noah Alatza, Chief Communications Officer for the University of Evansville. Thanks for watching WNIN Lawmakers.